Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 2 of our 6-part Rivals of Ixalan full set review, where guess what? Today we're going to talk about all of the blue cards. The screen looks very blue right now. You probably could have guessed that. So quickly before we get started though, just a really fast reminder about this series. This is first and foremost a limited preview. So we're going to talk about these cards through the limited scope for the most part. We'll also mention other formats, though, when applicable. Some of these cards could see some play in Standard, Modern, Commander. We'll definitely talk about that, too. But first and foremost, we'll be looking at Draft and Seal. Also, before we get started, just a real fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to support what we do here. You'll find our Patreon page linked. You'll find some product links on Amazon. Anything you purchase, once you go through that link, we'll get a small percentage no matter what it is. And also, finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. You can pick up Rivals there, among many other things. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. We got a lot of cards to talk about, a lot of good ones here in blue. We'll start off with Admirals Order. This was a card previewed by LSV, and you know they're going to give LSV a pretty spiky card. This one's actually quite interesting. Some ways it's awkward at times, because it's just basically a cancel if you can't attack with a creature. But if you can attack, at least for that turn, you have the option of playing this for just 1 blue mana, which can really throw off your opponent quite a bit when you think about it, especially if they know you might have this card in your hand. And they do have to many times play around it. So this is a great card, first off, to bluff that you have if you don't have it, which is great. But here's the way you want to look at this. First main phase, don't do anything. Second main phase, you attack in. There's a lot of creatures out there that are either unblockable or just little flyers or things like that. Just attack in, and then, if your opponent does have a combat trick or something, they have to really think twice, because you could potentially play this for 1 blue, and then still have a play for your second main phase, like still put a creature down or something. And that's not good for your opponent, right? At least in the other way, if it was like a 3 casting cost cancel, then you're probably not playing anything most of the time on your second main phase, so it doesn't necessarily blow your opponent out of the water. But this can be pretty deadly if you can do both. Also, too, let's say they don't react and you don't use this. Well, then on your second main phase, you just keep 1 blue open. Whether you have this card in your hand or not, your opponent's going to have to think about it. And that's actually pretty awesome. So, yeah, this card is very, very good. It's going to see play in Standard, I have no doubt. This might even see some Modern play. I think it is that good. So, really cool design here. There's times it's going to be a little awkward for you, but a lot of times you're going to be really happy to, if nothing else, bluff that you have this card. Aquatic Incursion. When I first saw this card previewed, I thought, well, maybe this could get into Standard. It just depends on the direction of the Merfolk deck. That was, I think, the first day of previews. Since then, we saw so many great Merfolk. I'll just be honest. I mean, the Merfolk deck doesn't need this. 4 casting cost enchantment, even though it does give you 2 tokens with hexproof, which is kind of nice, and a decent mana sink for later. I just don't think you need to slow yourself down. Not with the tools you have now with these Merfolk Lords and such. You're just going to keep pounding Merfolk onto the battlefield and just getting them into your opponent's face, basically, is what's going to happen. You're not going to mess around with this. With that being said, do you play this in limited? Yeah, you know what? This is fine in some limited builds if you're trying to get yourself a few Merfolk on the battlefield, especially if you're all in on Merfolk. If you're not all in on Merfolk, I would skip this one. And as a matter of fact, depending on the builds, especially in draft, I might skip this one anyway. It's not going to make every build, but it can be okay for you. It's not a bad card for limited purposes. Crafty Cutpurse. Okay, here's an interesting one. We'll talk about limited first. This is a 4 casting cost 2/2 with flash, so if you don't have a reason to play this, in other words, token interactions between your opponent, then I wouldn't play this, because you don't want to play a 2/2 for 4 even with flash. It is a pirate. Maybe you're really desperate for a pirate, perhaps, but other than that, don't touch it. Now, if your opponent is playing with some sort of token generation, maybe it's vampires or something like that, and you feel like you can get a good swing, then yeah, sideboard it in. Because if you steal, say, 2 vampire tokens on 1 turn from your opponent, now for 4 mana, you're getting a 2/2 and a couple 1/1s with lifelink. That's actually pretty good for 4 mana, but I wouldn't just assume something like that's going to happen. I would just bring it in out of the sideboard. What about Standard? Well, this maybe does have some implications for decks like Godfarrow's Gift, as perhaps some sideboard tech against that. So I don't know, that might be a long shot considering its casting cost, but just something to consider. I'd at least want to test it in some builds. Crashing Tide. Okay, this one's pretty interesting. It's a sorcery unless you have a Merfolk. Now, if you have a Merfolk, playing this at instant speed is going to feel a whole lot better. And it cantrips, which is kind of awesome. It targets creature. It doesn't have to be your opponent's creature. Maybe a lot of times it will be for tempo reasons, but it could be one of your own if you're trying to protect your creature. Again, you probably need to have the flash ability for that to happen, but either to protect your creature or maybe you just want to return a creature to your hand to recast for an enters battlefield effect or something. A lot of versatility here, but it's better if you have a fair amount of merfolk. Now, when it comes to standard, I don't see this getting there. Even though it's not a bad card, I just, again, think the merfolk deck isn't going to need this. I think they have a lot more going for it, and I don't think they're going to want to let go of their aggro for a turn to do something like this. I think this is a nice to have, but not a need to have for a deck like that. When it comes to the limited scene, yes, I do think this is very, very playable, whether you have merfolk or not. Again, mostly because of cantrips, but it's a lot better if you have merfolk. Curious Obsession. I'm curious why they even bothered to make this card, but I like to be hard on the auras. Sometimes I'm kind of kidding around a little bit. Sometimes I'm not. In this case, I'm not. Some auras are great. Don't get me wrong. Like, cartouches were awesome, but something like this, I just don't feel good about it because, yes, you know what? If I have some unblockable creatures, this is good. And I'm not going to say you're never going to play this because you could have a fair amount of unblockable creatures or some small flyers or something. This card could actually be decent for you because it is really cheap. I will give it that. At least they made it cheap. What I don't like is if I'm behind and I draw this thing and I don't have a good line of attack, then it's a dead card. And that is not cool because that clause, of course, that if you can't use it, you lose it. So, I don't know. I'm not playing this, I think, probably hardly ever unless I'm really stacked with some evasion creatures or something. Dead-Eye Rig Hauler. Okay, this is good if you can trigger raid. It's bad if you can't. So again, this is a card that is definitely relegated to draft and sealed. It is a pirate though, which is cool too. So sometimes you just need a pirate. But regardless, you want to again have some of those high evasion creatures. Those little flyers, those unblockable cards. What's nice is raid works well both with pirates that can be really aggressive. Some of them have flying. And it also works well with merfolk, which sometimes can be unblockable. So it kind of makes sense that they did this type of design in blue. So I do like that quite a bit. And yes, a lot of times you use this card and it's going to be great for you. Other times you're going to end up playing a 3-2 for 4 and that's not going to feel so good. So again, maybe you skip this if you don't have a lot of those high evasion creatures. But if you can get away with this and basically do kind of a mana war effect, that's kind of awesome. That can be a huge swing, getting a 3-2 and having your opponent lose one of their things and maybe even their best thing. That's kind of awesome. So also, too, it doesn't have to be your opponent's creature. I always like to point that out. It can be one of yours if that makes sense at the time. Expel from Araska. Okay, this is one of the Ascend cards. It's instant speed. And it's a fine card if you feel like you're going to get to Ascend. I mean, return target non-land permanent to owner's hand. So again, that could be your things. That could be applicable some of the time. Or maybe more often it'll be your opponent's stuff. But I like that it's non-land permanent, so it doesn't have to be just creature. It can be other problematic cards, so that's a nice answer, even if it is just a tempo answer. Now, if you happen to have the City's Blessing, then even better, the card goes on top of the library, which is a bigger tempo play, and that's actually pretty good for 2 mana at instant speed. So, again, I don't know if you see this necessarily in Standard, because I don't know if Standard wants to rely on the fact that it needs to get Ascend for these cards to be able to really turn on and unlock their full potential. But I do think this is fantastic for you in draft and sealed, actually, in a lot of builds. Flood of Recollection. Okay, this is kind of a fun little, like, blue-style regrowth. It's sorcery speed, not instant. Kind of disappointing, but honestly, if it was an instant, it would have to cost more. Probably like 2 blue and 1 or something like that. So I don't know if I hate the fact that it only costs 2 blue and it's a sorcery. So you only play this, obviously, if you have good targets for it. Now, in Limited, you are going to have some important instants and sorceries, and maybe they're just simply removal spells, and that's all. So if you really need to pull one of your removal spells back and recast it, this is going to be pretty awesome for you, because so many times sealed, but even in draft, if a draft doesn't go great, sometimes you're sitting there like, I really don't have enough removal. Well, this almost becomes another removal spell. It's just conditional, right? It just has to be timed right. So that's actually pretty cool. And then, of course, there's other things you can do with it, too. So does this see play in Standard? I don't really think so because of the sorcery speed. It is not super expensive, though, so maybe it does come out of the sideboards for, like, some sort of control mirror matchup or something like that to try to get your counter magic or removal back. I won't count it out, but I do think it's probably more so going to be beneficial for you in draft and sealed. Hornswoggle. This is a counter spell, but it only hits creature spells. And it gives you a treasure token. There's not as many ways to get treasure tokens in Rivals as we saw in Ixalan, but of course you do mix those two sets, so keep that in mind. Now, the fact that this only hits creatures, I think for 3 mana, even though you're kind of banking one of the mana, I think that keeps this out of standard. But for limited purposes, there's a lot of reasons I'd play this. First off, I just want to disrupt my opponent's creatures. And of course, creatures are a big part of the draft and sealed games. Or maybe I want the treasure because I'm trying to do something where treasures matter, or I have a payout for them, or I just simply want to fix color or ramp. So a lot of good reasons to play this one in your limited game. Maybe it doesn't always make your build, but I think it could be quite good. Induced Amnesia. Okay, here's a non-land permanent you might actually want to bounce. This one's kind of interesting. It's a enchantment. When it comes into play, it does a targeted windfall effect. So you can target yourself with it. You can target an opponent with it if that's relevant. What's kind of cool about this too is when it does finally go to the graveyard, whether you destroy it or whatever, you get your original hand back too, so it has that feeling similar to Memory Jar, I guess. But it's kind of interesting because flicker effects can actually make the effect happen again, or bounce it, play it again. There's a lot of weird things you can do with it, as opposed to just playing a sorcery that goes to your graveyard, right? So I actually think this is kind of a cool card, and for limited, just seeing more cards could be good enough reason to play this, quite honestly. Yeah, I do like this quite a bit for draft and sealed, actually. I would really want to try this card out, especially if I can exploit it by bouncing it back and playing it again or something like that. As far as standard goes, I actually think it could see some play maybe in approach decks, help you get to that approach quicker. Kitesail Corsair. Okay, this is one of those really nice sort of cheap evasion creatures that help you turn on raid. I also like the nuance here that it says it has flying as long as it's attacking. And I mean, for many years, we saw the clause that it's a flyer that can't block other flyers. This almost feels a little more intuitive, so I don't know if maybe this is a new direction for that type of design. But anyway, it's also a pirate, but this is really about turning on raid. Don't really see this in standard, but for a pirate/raid deck in limited, you'll be happy to have this. Kamina's Awakening. Okay, this one's interesting because it is an effect where everybody gets to draw unless you get City's Blessing, and then it becomes one-sided and only you get to draw. Well, that's awesome, but again, can you count on City's Blessing? Sometimes maybe, but most of the time probably not. So let's talk about that in more detail. Here's what I like about the card just face value. Everybody draws a card, but they draw it at the beginning of your upkeep, not on their upkeeps. So you get first dibs at the card. So that's kind of nice. Unless they draw an instant, you get to kind of play your card before they play their cards. And that's actually good. For 4 mana though, 2 on color, is it that good? I don't know, because it is a reciprocal effect, but I at least like the fact that they did do that. Beyond that, once you get past the reciprocal effect, if you can get the City's Blessing, this card becomes amazing. So for limited purposes, if you feel like you can hit the City's Blessing, maybe you have a lot of treasure creation or something like that, I would run this and you're going to love this card. Even in a pinch, if you just have to use it as the reciprocal effect, like I said, it's not the worst card draw reciprocal effect I've ever seen. So it's got that going for it. Now, beyond that, another way that this could be interesting for you is if you feel like getting through your deck is going to be better than your opponent getting through their deck. For example, you have a lot of cheap spells, like maybe a little bit of aggro going on, or maybe control, a lot of removal spells, a lot of control magic. Then this card could be okay because you can stop what your opponents put down, perhaps. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this card. All in all, end of the day, draft sealed. Am I playing it? Maybe not in every build if I'm worried about my opponents outrunning me, but if I think I can hit that City's Blessing consistently, I'm definitely playing it. Or if I think my deck's going to be faster than my opponents, I'm going to play it there too. For standard, I think it's a little too risky, unfortunately, because standard decks are more powerful. You don't necessarily want to give your opponents cards, even again, if it is reciprocal. There's certain matchups where that might not be good for you. Now, the one place I could see it, though, is maybe approach, because again, it's all about trying to get to the approach. Mist-Cloaked Herald. Okay, another enabler for raid, basically. Again, not a card that I don't think you'll see in standard. I mean, maybe a couple copies of this shows up in the Merfolk deck because it is something that can be buffed because the Merfolk Lords are pretty tough. So maybe it sees a little play there, but definitely in draft and sealed, if you're trying to turn on your raid and you have ways maybe to buff this there too, could be pretty good for you. Guess who's back? Back again. Negate's back. Tell your friends. This card is actually already standard legal. It was in Aether Revolt, and this is a great card. I mean, it stands to reason now. It's going to be in standard longer, and also too, you can play it in this limited environment, so that's kind of cool. The art's amazing too. Great job with the art. I really want to see this in foil. So we know Negate's a great card. Yes, it already sees standard play. It will continue to. And as far as limited goes, even though it's not a creature spell, and I know limited can be very creature-centric, you know you're going to get a removal spell or some other problematic non-creature spell lobbed at you at some point during a game. So, yeah, you know what? You're going to play this and still be happy with it. Nizal Primal Tide. Okay, this one's crazy because in the world of limited, a 7 casting cost 7/7 in blue is actually pretty good. It even has a way to defend it, even though it is a little cumbersome. And it could lead to some more card draw for you. It can't be countered. This is a great card. I mean, this is the first pick in a draft a lot of the time. And on top of that, I mean, if you open this in your seal pool, you're going to be having a real good day, I think. Fantastic card just overall. Now, outside of limited, could this see play in standard? I think maybe like in a control mirror matchup, you bring this out of the board. It could be interesting there. If you're not in the mirror matchup, I think there's maybe other finishers that are a little more efficient than this one. But I don't know, some sort of Esper Control mirror match, which I do think Esper Control could get there. Maybe not in this meta, but in a future meta. Or just a standard kind of control deck. There's a lot of pieces out there for that now. Not to mention the approach decks. This could be maybe a secondary win condition in the mirror or something. So, yeah, interesting card. Yeah, I think we'll see some play. Great in Commander 2, another one of these legendary Elder Dinosaurs, which will be really fun there. Release to the Winds. Okay, this is a card that actually is pretty cool. Now, when I did the preview of this card, I kind of misread it. Well, I actually read it right, but then my brain glitched, and I wasn't reading to cast it without paying its mana cost. But don't be afraid. A lot of people informed me of that. So, anyway, really, which I appreciate because I want to get it right for the actual set review. So anyway, Release to the Winds, exile target non-land permanent. Okay, so that alone is pretty interesting to me if you don't even read any further because, again, a lot of versatility. I can protect one of my creatures if it's going to be targeted. I can tempo my opponent a little bit, and it's non-land permanent, not just creature, just tons of versatility, things I can do. Now, as long as it remains exiled, then the owner can actually cast it without paying its mana cost. So if I do tempo one of my opponent's creatures, they're going to cast it for free next turn, so it's very temporary. But if I tempo something that I want to bring back in, like, for example, we saw the enchantment that is like the Windfall a few moments ago, or what have you, it does open up that, and I also don't have to pay the casting cost the next time around, which is super sweet, right? So there's a lot you can do there. So what do you do with this card? Yes, it's great and limited for a lot of reasons. The versatility alone is just a good limited card for draft or sealed, right? And if you have some tricks to go with it, wonderful. But even if you don't, it's good. Standard, yeah, I think you could see some standard play. Again, the versatility is really cool. And there's maybe some interesting interactions you can find with this when it comes to enters the battlefield effects and such. So again, maybe it's a card that does show up in some control builds or maybe approach or something like that. And even in Legacy for like a sneak attack deck, imagine you sneak a great creature and attack with it. Then you, before you have to sacrifice it, you use this, put it into the exile, and then cast it again for free. And then you actually get to keep the creature for really just a red, blue, and 2. And if that creature happens to be, I don't know, like Emrakul or something, you're probably having a good day. That might be a win more, though, but I don't know. Maybe it's just, like, not necessary at that point. I'm not sure. But also, you might want to try it, like, in a Modern Through the Breach build, something like that, too. I'd at least want to try it out. I think it's an interesting thought, if nothing else. So, really cool card, real good design, and I think I got it right this time. River Darter. Okay, this one's a 2/3 for 3 Merfolk Warrior that can't be blocked by dinosaurs. So you kind of say to yourself, well, maybe that's just a sideboard card. But, you know, honestly, a 2/3 for 3 in Drafts and Sealed is a nice curve filler no matter what. So I can see myself main decking this probably more often than not, quite honestly, especially in blue. That's actually not bad. It's also a Merfolk, so that could come in handy with other buff effects and such. And if for some reason I don't main deck this, if my opponent's playing dinosaurs, yeah, definitely bring it in because it's going to be really good for you there. I wouldn't even necessarily count this thing out of the Merfolk deck in Standard just because it's a nice 3-drop, and I don't know if there's a lot of good 3-drops to choose from. I haven't sat down and tried to brew the deck or anything yet, so I could be wrong, but I feel like this is at least something that's has a possibility of being there in some quantity. Now, if the dinosaur deck really takes off, then yeah, maybe even more so. This is a better chance even if it's out of the board. Riverwise Augur. Okay, this is actually kind of interesting to me. It has a built-in Brainstorm style effect. So it costs you 4, which Brainstorm only costs 1. Obviously, that's much, much better, I know. But you get a creature out of this too, a 2/2 Merfolk. So that's a thing. But you do get to Brainstorm. And even if it's costing you 4, in today's environment, that's actually not that bad. So I actually like this card a lot. I mean, digging deeper into your deck to find the things you need quicker. really, really awesome. And remember, with these type of effects, you draw the 3 cards, and then you can put any 2 cards back on top of your library. It doesn't have to be among the 3 you drew. So that's actually really, really sweet. So yeah, I think this card sees standard play for sure in probably Merfolk decks, but maybe even other places like control builds just generally. So yeah, fantastic card here. And this is great for you in limited too. Like excellent, excellent uncommon. Sailor of Means. Okay, I was joking around yesterday about Wizards being lazy and just bringing cards back from Ixalan. Here's another one of them. And, okay, I gave him the pass on Conquistadors yesterday because it kind of makes sense that you want those in your draft. But cards like this, I'm kind of like, really, Wizards? Same art, same everything. Well, they changed the flavor text on these, but same art. Could you, like, not give us something similar? Or just give us something that's the same with a different name or something? I don't know. But hey, there you go. It's the same card. We know what it does. Again, it's not something you'll probably see in standard or anything like that, but it's a 1/4, nice little blocker for 3, and it gives you a treasure. That's why you're playing it. You either want a pirate or you want a treasure. And if your deck's in the market for that, then this is a card you'll run. If it's not, then maybe you don't run it, unless you're trying to gum up the board or protect against aggro. So if it's not in your main deck and you're getting beat down by some early creatures, yeah, sideboard it in. You'll be happy you did. Sea Legs. This is a quick little flash combat trick for your blue deck, and it's better if you have pirates, obviously, but it's still good even if you don't. I don't know if this always makes my cut just because there's so many good cards a lot of times, especially in draft, and you sit down thinking you're going to use this card, and then you're like, well, I got some better combat tricks, or I have some better removal, and okay, maybe then it doesn't make your cut, but if you don't, this is great, and a lot of times I think you do run this. See, now here's an aura I actually like. It doesn't hurt that I can flash it into play. That goes a long way for me anyway. Seafloor Oracle. This is a great merfolk at rare. You're not going to see it all the time in limited, but when you do play it, you'll be really happy, as long as you have other merfolk, of course, to back it up. If you don't have a lot of other merfolk, then I might skip this, unfortunately, because it is only a 2/3 for 4/2 on color. That's not super exciting. But if you have some merfolk, especially some of the unblockable ones, you're going to be really happy to run this card. It's super sweet because if you can just connect one time, it replaces itself. Once you connect more than once, this is just card advantage all day long. It's going to have a target on its back. It's not going to live long, probably. But if you already have a decent board state, it doesn't even have to be a great board state, but a couple merfolk tokens, maybe one unblockable merfolk, something like that, and you play this, you're going to definitely get some great advantage out of it. So yeah, if you're behind, it doesn't save you, granted, but it's still a really good card as long as you have merfolk to back it up. I do think this does make it into the standard merfolk deck. Maybe the modern merfolk deck. The casting cost has me on the fence a little bit, unfortunately. And again, that deck is so streamlined, maybe it just doesn't need this. But definitely the standard deck. I think it's part of it. Secrets of the Golden City. Maybe one of my favorite Ascend cards, quite honestly, because it's good without the Ascend. This is actually a card I'd be happy to play, kind of like a Divination a little bit. And those cards are good. They have seen standard play, so no reason, honestly, this can't see standard play in control builds or what have you, or approach builds. So, yeah, drawing 2 cards for 3, that's good. If I have the City's Blessing, drawing 3 cards for 3, yeah, that's better. This card's going to be awesome for you in Limited, especially if you can turn on the City's Blessing, but even if you can't, and yes, this does see standard play. Silvergill Adept, great merfolk. This is a reprint, of course, and this has seen play in modern merfolk, even a little bit in legacy merfolk in the past, so this is a card stands to reason, will definitely be in the standard merfolk deck. And in limited, this is great for you if you have some merfolk targets. Now, playing this for 5 isn't the end of the world either. I mean, you don't want a 2/1 for 5, but it does at least replace itself. Like, it's not the worst thing if things aren't going to plan. But you really want to play this by revealing the merfolk and then only paying 2. Siren Reaver. Okay, here's another raid enabler that's also a little cheaper if you're already on the raid train. So you can play like one of those cheap flyers that are like the 2/1 for 2, attack in, play this one a little bit cheaper. Now you can attack in with this and just do the next raid thing and just kind of go off that way. And that could actually be really good for you in limited. So if you're in that pirate/raid style build, yeah, this card's going to be really key for you, actually. And even if you're not, a 3/2 flyer for 4 is actually pretty decent too, just on its own. So you might be happy just with it as simply a utility creature that can attack in. So that's fine too. So overall, good card. I don't really see it in standard, but great for draft and sealed. Slippery Scoundrel. Okay, here's another Ascend card. This is awesome if you can hit the Ascend. If you can't hit the Ascend, though, you probably don't want to touch this. So think of it this way. If I'm in a deck that I'm comfortable hitting the Ascend, which is probably going to be a deck creating treasures if I'm in blue, then yeah, run this, and things could work out for you. You don't want a 2/2 for 3 that's not doing any of these special things, but if you can hit the City's Blessing, this will be a great card. It also helps with raid if you can get there. Soul of Rapids. Decent card because of the hexproof. I mean, 5 casting cost 3/2 flyer doesn't feel great, but at the same time, sometimes in limited you just need a flyer. This one having hexproof may be difficult at times for your opponent to deal with, especially if you have some removal to back it up. Now, if they get themselves a 2-power flyer in the air, then this thing becomes a lot worse, obviously. So that's why you want that removal backup. Maybe this is better like in Is It Colors or something like that, but it's not bad. It might not always make your cut, but it's definitely runnable. The big issue is the 5 casting cost for what it is, because you might have some other 5 casting cost things that are just better. If that's the case, this won't make your cut. Spire Winder. Okay, this is a snake. I don't know, it makes me smile in Ixalan whenever I see anything that's not one of the 4 tribes. Like, you're kind of like, why is there a snake here? But anyway, Commander players do, some of them look for snakes, so this is another one. And this card is a 2/3 for 4 with flying. It has Ascend, and if you hit the City's Blessing, it gets +1/+1, becoming essentially a 3/4. 3/4 for 4 is great. A 2/3 for 4 is not as great. But again, sometimes, I already said it, you need a flyer in limited. So if you just need one, you need one, and here it is. And sometimes that could even help you with just raid or anything else, generally getting a little more damage across. So yeah, if you can hit it, better. If you can't hit it, it's not unplayable, but obviously it's better and probably like some of the decks that have some treasure creation. Sworn Guardian. Not a lot to say about this one. I mean, very vanilla Merfolk Warrior here, 1/3 for 2. But it's good, like it gums up the ground a little bit. If you're not main decking it and you come up against some aggro, you might want to bring it in for those matchups. Not something necessarily that I see happening in Standard or anything, of course, because it is very plain. But yeah, it's a fine Merfolk for you. Better, obviously, if you have the Merfolk synergies. Timestream Navigator. This one's a mythic. I want to like this card, but I'm having a hard time getting there with it. The Ascend is an issue for me because you have to kind of guarantee that you get the Ascend before this does anything. It's a 1/1. It doesn't have haste, so you have to untap with this before you can get to the ability. And once you get to the ability, it's cool because it's one of the few abilities, and actually in recent history, the only ability that has said, take an extra turn and don't exile the card. In this case, it goes to the bottom of your library. So there are ways to get it back, whether it's maybe just shuffle effects to help it bring it to the top and get a little lucky, or tutor effects, stuff like that, right? So you're kind of looking at this card like, you know, if I can pull this off, I could actually maybe exploit this more than once during a game. That could be pretty big. You also have to remember, though, too, that sometimes Time Walk, especially in weaker formats, it's just like draw an extra card. You know, it's not always going to be like this amazing moment. Sometimes it is, and it just kind of slams the door on the game. But so many times it's not. So many times it's like a tempo play where you're drawing a card, you know? So you can't like think if I can resolve this, the sky's the limit, I win, because that's not the case either. So where does this fit in? Honestly, would I play this in Draft or Sealed? Yes, I probably would, just because it's kind of a fun, quirky card that I could take the risk and maybe every once in a while it could pay off for me. And maybe it will live. Maybe I can pull off the actual ability. And if I do, maybe it will matter, right? It's a lot of maybes, though. But at least it's only a 2-drop. Like, it's not a huge commitment. So I can see myself at least trying it out. And who knows, maybe I try it out and it's actually better than I think it is. But I really wouldn't touch it, though, unless I'm in a deck that has a lot of treasure creation. I want to make sure I can hit that Ascend pretty consistently, in other words. Standard, there's just too much going on here. Yes, if you could give it haste, if you could guarantee you got the Ascends, if you had a whole bunch of tutors or something like that, I don't know, then this could be a good card. So maybe Commander, folks, this could be fun in Commander with a lot of tutors or something, and a way to give it haste. Then you might think about perhaps, maybe not necessarily going unlimited with it, but just being able to use it a number of times. That could be good enough. I think that's where this card probably shines, honestly. As far as other constructed formats, I'm just not feeling it right now. Warkite Marauder. This one's actually kind of cool because for limited purposes, you can put this down on turn 2. It's a 2/1 flyer. You get in for some damage, and this could add up over time. And then on top of that, it turns on raid. That could be super sweet for pirates and raid. Now, beyond that, let's say your opponent does go ahead and answer it with another flyer. Well, you use that ability on that flyer, and you can attack in for another turn or two, maybe, and get by with some more damage, some more raid, some more raid enabling, right? So I actually really like this card quite a bit. This is fantastic. It's a rare. You won't see it all the time, obviously, but Draft your sealed. I think this card could do some serious work for you. Standard, I think it could be a sideboard card, and here's the interaction I'm thinking about here. It's Bristling Hydra from everyone's favorite decks, Energy decks. So the Bristling Hydra, it really creates a weird situation for the player using that card, because let's say that's staring across the table at me. I attack with this, and I target the Hydra. Now, the opponent has a decision to make. Either eat 3 energy to give the Hydra hexproof, because this is their last chance to do it, or risk the fact that I might have a removal spell to get rid of it. Now, it's not the be-all, end-all of plays, because you are putting it in the hands of your opponent. If getting rid of the energy is not going to hurt them that bad, they'll get rid of the energy. If getting rid of the creature is not going to hurt them that bad, they're going to get rid of the creature. But there are times where you're at least boxing them into a corner to the point where they have to make a decision that's bad or bad, right? So I think maybe out of the board, you might see this show up. I don't know. We'll have to kind of wait and see on that one, of course. But it's just an interesting interaction to think about. Waterknot. Hey, everybody, remember Claustrophobia? They didn't just bring that back with the same art, did they? They actually made a new card. It's called Waterknot. So they should have just put Claustrophobia and Ixalan and just put it in this set, too. I don't know why they didn't do that. So anyway, this is premium blue removal, though. This is a fantastic card. I actually really like the art on it, too, by the way. And the card is just maybe even first pickable a lot of times in packs because it's awesome. I mean, blue doesn't get like the destroy target creature, right? This is what they get, and this is just fine. This is going to be good for you if you're in that color, so you'll be happy with it. And hey, you never know. Every once in a while, Claustrophobia style cards do creep into standard a little bit, but regardless, though, this card definitely will be great for you in limited. Well, guess what? Those are our blue cards, so we're getting there. That was part 2. Tomorrow we'll be back with part 3. We're going to look at all of the cards in black. Looking forward to that chapter. There's some powerful ones, some nice removal, definitely in that color we'll be talking about. Until next time, though, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe. Have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.